Ba'ath Iraq, formerly the Iraqi Republic, covers the history of Iraq between 1968 and 2003. During the period of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party's rule, this period began with high economic growth and soaring prosperity, but ended with Iraq facing social, political, and economic stagnation. The average annual income decreased because of several external factors, and several internal policies of the regime. Iraqi President Abdul Rahman Arif and Iraqi Prime Minister Tahir Yahya were ousted during the July 17 Coup d'Iraqi led by Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr of the Ba'ath Party, which had previously held power in 1963 and was led primarily by al-Bakr, its leader, and Saddam Hussein. Saddam, through his post as de facto chief of the party's intelligence services, became the country's de facto leader by the mid-1970s, and became de jure leader in 1979 when he succeeded al-Bakr in office as president. During al-Bakr's de jure rule, the country's economy grew, and Iraq's standing within the Arab world increased. However, several internal factors were threatening the country's stability, among them the country's conflict with Iran and factions within Iraq's own Shia Muslim community. An external problem was the border conflict with Iran, which would contribute to the Iran-Iraq War. Saddam became President of Iraq, Chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council, Prime Minister and General Secretary of the Regional Command of the Ba'ath Party in 1979. During a wave of anti-government protests in Iraq led by Shias, the Ba'ath Party, which was secular in nature, harshly repressed the protests. Another policy change was Iraq's foreign policy towards Iran, a Shia Muslim country. Deteriorating relations eventually led to the Iran-Iraq War, which started in 1980 when Iraq launched a full-scale invasion of Iran. Following the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the Iraqis believed the Iranians to be weak, and thus an easy target for the military. This notion proved to be incorrect, and the war lasted for 8 years. Iraq's economy deteriorated during the war, and the country became dependent on foreign donations to fund the war effort. The war ended in a stalemate when a ceasefire was reached in 1988, which resulted in a status quo antebellum. When the war ended, Iraq found itself in the midst of an economic depression, owed millions of dollars to foreign countries, and was unable to repay its creditors. Kuwait, which had deliberately increased oil output following the war, reducing international oil prices, further weakened the Iraqi economy. In response to this, Saddam threatened Kuwait that, unless it reduced its oil output, Iraq would invade. Negotiations broke down, and on August 2, 1990, Iraq launched an invasion of Kuwait. The resulting international response led to the Persian Gulf War, which Iraq lost. The United Nations initiated economic sanctions in the war's aftermath to weaken the Ba'ath Iraqi government. The country's economic conditions worsened during the 1990s, and at the turn of the 21st century, Iraq's economy started to grow again as several states ignored UN sanctions. In the aftermath of the September 11 attacks of 2001, the United States initiated a global war on terrorism, and labeled Iraq as a part of an axis of evil. In 2003, U.S. coalition forces invaded Iraq, and a Ba'ath Iraqi government was deposed less than a month later. History: 1968 coup. In contrast to previous coups d'Iraqi in Iraq's history, the 1968 coup, referred to as the 17th of July Revolution, was, according to Concoglan, a relatively civil affair. The coup started in the early hours of the 17th 19th of July, when a number of military units and civilian Ba'athists seized several key government and military buildings. These included the Ministry of Defense, the electricity station, radio stations, all the city's bridges, and a number of military bases. All telephone lines were cut at 3 o'clock, by which time several tanks had been commanded to halt in front of the presidential palace. Abdul Rahman Arif, the then president of Iraq, first knew of the coup when jubilant members of the Republican Guard started shooting into the air in a premature triumph. Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr, the leader of the operation, told Arif about his situation through military communication hardware at the base of operations. Arif asked for more time, during which he contacted other military units to seek support. As he soon found out, the odds were against him, and he surrendered. Arif telephoned al-Bakr and told him that he was willing to resign. To show his gratitude, al-Bakr guaranteed his safety. Al-Bakr's deputies, Hardan al-Dakriti and Salah Omar al-Ali, were ordered to give Arif this message in person. Arif and his wife and son were quickly sent on the first available flight to London, UK. Later that morning, a Ba'athist broadcast announced that a new government had been established. The coup was carried out with such ease that no lives were lost. The coup succeeded because of contributions made by the military. The Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party was not strong enough to take power by itself. The Ba'ath Party managed to make a deal with Abdur Razzaq and NAIF, the deputy head of military intelligence, and Ibrahim Daud, the head of the Republican Guard. Both NAIF and Daud knew that the long-term survival of Arif's and Tahir Yahya's government looked bleak, but also knew that the Ba'athists needed them if the coup was to be successful. For his participation in the coup, NAIF demanded to be given the post of Prime Minister after the coup as a reward, and a symbol for his strength. Daud was also rewarded with the post. He became Minister of Defense. However, not everything was going according to Naif's and Daud's plan. Al-Bakr had told the Ba'ath leadership in a secret meeting that the two would be liquidated either during or after the revolution. Al-Bakr, as the leader of the coup's military operation, retained his position as regional secretary of the Ba'ath Party, and was elected to the posts of chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council, president and prime minister. In the immediate aftermath of the coup, a power struggle developed between al-Bakr and NAIF. In all practicality, NAIF should have had the upper hand. He was a respected officer and was supported by the common soldier. Al-Bakr, however, proved to be more cunning, persuasive and organized than NAIF, Daud and the supporters. One of al-Bakr's first decisions in office was to appoint over 100 new officers to the Republican Guard. Saddam Hussein worked, in the meantime, to establish the party's security and intelligence organization to combat its enemies. On the 29th of July, Daud left for a tour to Jordan to inspect the Iraqi troops located there following the Six-Day War with Israel. The following day, NAIF was invited to eat lunch at the presidential palace with al-Bakr, during which Saddam burst into the room with 3 accomplices and threatened NAIF with death. NAIF responded by crying out, "I have 4 children." Saddam ordered NAIF to leave Iraq immediately if he wanted to live. NAIF complied, was exiled to Morocco. An assassination attempt in 1973 was unsuccessful, but he was assassinated in London on the orders of Saddam in 1978. Daud shared a similar fate, and was exiled to Saudi Arabia. The Ba'athists were by no means ensured of victory if any of Naif's supporters had known of the operation against him. Baghdad could have become the center, in the words of historian Concoglan, of an ugly bloodbath. Al-Ba's rule and Saddam's rise to power. Al-Bakr strengthened his position in the party with the help of Saddam's newly established party security apparatus and the intelligence services. Most of 1968 was used to repress non-Ba'athist thought and groups. For instance, a campaign against Nasrists and communists was initiated under Saddam's command. Several spy plots were created by the government. Spies who were caught were accused of being a part of a Zionist plot against the state. The Iraqi Communist Party was skeptical of the new Ba'athist government, as many of its members remembered the anti-communist campaign launched against them by the Ba'athist government of 1963. After taking power, al-Bakr offered the ICP cabinet positions in the new government. The ICP rejected this offer. Al-Bakr responded by initiating a systematic campaign against the ICP and communist sympathizers. However, as historian Charles Tripp notes in A History of Iraq, the campaign started a curious game, whereby the government alternately persecuted and courted the party until 1972–1973, when the ICP was offered, and accepted, membership in the National Progressive Front. The reason for this curious game was the Ba'ath Party's belief that the ICP was more dangerous than it really was. When Aziz al-Haji broke away from the ICP, established the Iraqi Communist Party and initiated a popular revolutionary war against the government, it was duly crushed. By April 1969, the popular revolutionary uprising had been crushed, and al-Haji recanted his beliefs publicly. Another reason for this anti-communist policy was that many Ba'ath Party members openly sympathized with communists or other socialist forces. However, at this stage, neither al-Bakr nor Saddam had enough support within the party to initiate a policy unpopular within it. At the 7th Regional Congress of the Ba'ath Party, both al-Bakr and other leading Ba'athists expressed the support for radical socialism. By the mid to late 1970s, Saddam's power within the Ba'ath Party and the government grew. He became de facto leader of the country. Although al-Bakr remained as president, Ba'ath Party leader and Revolutionary Command Council chairman. In 1977, following a wave of protests by Shiites against the government, al-Bakr relinquished his control over the Ministry of Defense. Adnan Karalatulfa, Saddam's brother-in-law, was appointed defense minister. This appointment underscored the clannish character of the Ba'ath Party and the government. In contrast to Saddam's fortunes, those of al-Baz were on the wane. Rumors of al-Baz's bad health began to circulate in the country. By the end of 1977, al-Bakr had little control over the country through his office as president. The reason Saddam did not become president until 1979 may be explained by Saddam's own insecurity. Before making himself de jure head of state, Saddam initiated an anti-communist campaign. The ICP had no real power, and most of its leading officials had left the country or been imprisoned or executed by the Ba'ath government. The campaign was not centered on the ICP, but also Ba'athists who did not support Saddam. Saddam had initiated a similar campaign in 1978, that time to check where the loyalties of certain left-wingers were. Baathism or socialism. Following the campaign, Saddam entered the Arab world stage for the first time under the banner of Nasserism and Gamal Abdel Nasser by criticizing the Camp David Accords between Anwar Sadat of Egypt and the State of Israel. In response to the Iranian Revolution, several Iraqi Shiites revolted against what they saw as a Sunni Ba'ath-led government, which led to the collapse of the Ba'ath Party in certain areas of the country. It was in this situation that Saddam took over the offices of President, Ba'ath Party leader and Revolutionary Command Council chairman. Izzat Ibrahim al-Juri was promoted to the office of vice chairman. There were also rumors within the top echelons of power that al-Bakr was planning to designate Hafiz al-Assad as his successor. Immediately after Saddam seized power, over 60 members of the Ba'ath Party and the government leadership were charged with fomenting an anti-Iraqi Ba'athist plot in collaboration with al-Assad and the Damascus-based Ba'ath Party. Early years, Iran-Iraq War and aftermath. Once he assumed the presidency, a cult of personality was created around Saddam. He was represented as the father of the nation and, by extension, of the Iraqi people. National institutions were established to strengthen the image of him fostered by the Iraqi propaganda machine. The Ba'ath Party also contributed to the cult of personality. By 1979 it was a nationwide organization, and became a propaganda center for pro-Saddam literature. The propaganda campaign created a common sense of nationhood for many Iraqis. The Shiite protests were not quelled by these propaganda campaigns, and the establishment of an Islamic Republic in Iran influenced many Shiites to stand up against the Sunni-dominated government. At first, relations between Iran and Iraq were fairly good, but ideological differences could not remain concealed forever. The new Iranian leadership was composed of Shia Islamists while the Iraqi Ba'athists were secular. Iran has become concerned about the Iraqi government's continued repression against the Iraqi Islamist Shiites. At the beginning of 1980, several border clashes took place between the two countries. Iraq considered the newly established Iran to be weak. The country was in a state of continued civil unrest, and the Iranian leaders had purged thousands of officers and soldiers because of the political views. It has been presumed that the Iran-Iraq war would result in a quick Iraqi victory. Saddam's plan was to strengthen Iraq's position in the Persian Gulf and on the Arab world stage. A quick victory would restore Iraq's control over all of Shat al-Arab, an area which Iraq had lost to Iran in 1975. Saddam abrogated the Treaty of 1975 in a meeting of the National Assembly on 17 September 1980. This abrogation was followed shortly afterwards by several preemptive strikes on Iran and by the invasion of Iran. Saddam believed that the Iranian government would have to disengage in order to survive. Not only was this view faulty, but it overestimated the strength of the Iraqi military. The Iranian government saw the invasion as a test of the revolution itself and all its achievements. The military plan proved to be elusive. Iraq believed that the Iranian government would quickly disintegrate during the Iraqi invasion. This did not happen. Saddam, in a rare moment of frankness, admitted as much. While the war was not going as planned, Iraq reasserted its view of the situation, and claimed that winning the war was a matter of national honor. The majority of the Ba'athist leadership still believed that Iran would collapse under the weight of Iraqi force. In 1982, Iran counterattacked and was successful in driving the Iraqis back into Iraq. That year alone, an estimated 40,000 Iraqis were taken prisoner. The defeats of 1982 were a blow to Iraq. With the economic situation worsening because of falling oil prices, the Iraqi standard of living worsened. The Revolutionary Command Council and the Ba'ath Military Command, Regional Command and National Command met in an extraordinary session in 1982 to discuss the possibility of a ceasefire proposal to the Iranian government. The ceasefire proposal made at the meeting was rejected by the Iranian government. If the proposal had been accepted, Saddam would not have survived politically, since it was supported by all members of the Regional Command, National Command and the Revolutionary Command Council. It was at this time that rumors started circulating that Hussein would step down as president to make way for al-Bakr, the former president. As events proved, this did not happen, and al-Bakr died in 1982 under mysterious circumstances. Bloodshed during the conflict nearly led to a mutiny led by Ma Abdel Rashid, father-in-law of Saddam's second son. Rashid began public criticism, and claimed that loss of life could have been averted if not for Saddam's meddling into military affairs. This confrontation with the military led to the greater independence of military planning from Ba'athist leadership interference. Shortly afterwards, the Iraqi Air Force once again established air superiority. The turn of events caused the Iraqi government to focus on Iraqi Kurdistan, which had revolted. Saddam appointed his cousin Ali Hassan al-Majid as military chief in Kurdistan. Al-Majid initiated the Al-Anfal campaign. Chemical weapons were used against civilians. In April 1988, after a series of Iraqi military victories, a ceasefire was agreed between Iraq and Iran. The war is commonly considered status quo antebellum. Persian Gulf War, the 1990s and the Iraq War. In the aftermath of the Iran-Iraq War, Kuwait intentionally increased the country's oil output. This led to an international price decrease in oil. Saddam reacted by threatening to invade Kuwait if it continued to increase its oil output. Saudi Arabia, frightened by Saddam's military strength, then persuaded Kuwait to lower its oil output. However, when Kuwait lowered its oil output, Venezuela increased its output. Saddam then ordered the invasion of Kuwait to solve the country's economic problems. With the professed goal of uniting Iraq, Kuwait was considered by many Iraqis as part of Iraq. On the 18th of July 1990, Saddam demanded that Kuwait repay Iraq for the oil it had stolen, and nullified Iraq's debt to Kuwait. The Kuwaiti leadership failed to respond, and on the 2nd of August 1990, the Iraqi military began the invasion of Kuwait. The invasion led to an international outcry. The United Nations, United States and the United Kingdom condemned the invasion and introduced sanctions against Iraq, and the Soviet Union and several Arab states also condemned the invasion. George H. W. Bush, President of the United States, demanded the immediate withdrawal of Iraqi troops from Kuwait and restoration of the Kuwaiti government. Saddam responded by making Kuwait an Iraqi province. The Gulf War was initiated by a United States-led coalition, which succeeded in winning the war in less than a year. On the evening of the 24th of February, several days before the Gulf War ceasefire was signed in Safwan, the Saudi Arabia-based radio station Voice of Free Iraq broadcast a message to the Iraqis to rise up and overthrow Saddam. The speaker on the radio was Salah Omar al-Ali, a former member of the Ba'ath Party and the ruling Revolutionary Command Council. Al-Ali's message urged the Iraqis to overthrow the criminal tyrant of Iraq. Al-Ali's radio broadcast encouraged Iraqis to stage a revolution and claimed that will flee the battlefield when he becomes certain that the catastrophe has engulfed every street, every house and every family in Iraq. believing that the United States was on its side. A nationwide uprising against Saddam's rule began in March 1991, which was repressed by Saddam's loyalist forces. The United Nations successfully established a no-fly zone to halt the advance of Saddam's forces. Instead of occupying Iraqi Kurdistan, the Kurdish Autonomous Republic was established, with thousands of Iraqi troops stationed at the Iraqi-Kurdish border. The suppression of the rebellion led thousands of people to flee their homes, most to Turkey or Iran. On 2 and 3 April 1991, Turkey and Iran, respectively, raised the issue at the UN Security Council. The Security Council adopted Resolution 688, which stated that Iraq had to allow access for international humanitarian organizations and report openly about government repression. Iraq experienced another period of unrest in early 1999 following the killing of Mohammed Sadiq al-Sadr by Iraqi security forces. In the aftermath of the September 11 attacks, U.S. President George W. Bush included Saddam in his axis of evil. In 2002, the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1441, which stated that Iraq had failed to fulfill its obligations demanded by the UN. The United States and the United Kingdom would use Resolution 1441 as a pretext for war. The 2003 US-led invasion of the country forced the Ba'ath Party and Saddam to go underground. Saddam was captured later that year, and was executed in 2006.